Yes, thoroughly amateur. Well, I don't know why the first thing that comes to my mind and out of my mouth in these things is always something really silly. But I do occasionally like to vary how I do my opening sequence, as I did here, with you seeing me pick it up, turn to the page, all that. Because I don't like the same thing every single time. And I'm kind of proud of being thoroughly amateur. You know, the recording setup I've been using lately with my phone there on the kitchen table, me sitting here at the table, it's working better than any setup I've had before, which is why I keep on using it. And one of these days maybe I'll try putting the phone on a book, or lay something across here to set things. There are various possibilities that I might do, but right now, if it ain't broke, I ain't gonna fix it. But I like to get some variety and demonstrate that, yeah, when I say thoroughly amateur production, it is. This is a Sippin' and Talkin' video. We have here the mighty Glencairn. Reminds me of Casey Allen on Beautiful Bourbon. He uses those ice spheres when, he's not like me. He drinks it straight, he puts it on ice, he puts water in it. Well, he puts water then on ice. But he calls it a gorgeous ice sphere. Casey is very funny. Even if it turns out your palate and his don't agree, I think you should watch his channel, just because he's so entertaining. I need to get that out the way again for now. Tonight, and I don't think I've done a video with this yet. Ouch. Which means I need to do a review video, but I already said this is Sippin' and Talkin', so that's what it is. It's Clyde Mays Single Barrel. And isn't that a purty label? It's straight bourbon whiskey. It doesn't name a state because it's juice from MGP in Indiana, but the brand is Alabama. Let's see, does it have Clyde? Yeah, there's Clyde. He was a World War II vet who, in order to feed his family after the war, took to making moonshine. And his gimmick, if I can call it that, was to bake apples and put them in the barrels, because he, unlike most people who made illegal liquor, he would age some of it. Mostly it comes off the worm, you temper it down to selling proof, and you sell it without it ever aging at all. That's why they call it white lightning. That's one of the many names for it. But Clyde Mays, or Clyde May actually, it's M-A-Y apostrophe S, so it's a possessive. Clyde May, and I think I've been saying his name wrong all along, would bake these apples, put them in the barrels in which he aged some of his whiskey, and it gave it a distinctive flavor, and it got to be real popular. At one point, I think it was in the 70s, he did a stint in prison for making illegal liquor, got out, fired up his stills right back again. He started out, of course, as I said, to feed his family. In rural Alabama, right after World War II, there wasn't a whole lot else he could do. He worked at whatever he could get. And I know, sipping and talking, but I'm still going way off where I started. Until the past 10, 15, 20 years, I never heard a ton about having a career. You graduated from high school, and if you didn't go to college, and even up into my 20s and 30s, a lot of people never did go to college. I never did. You graduated from high school, or even before then, and you got a job. And as opportunity offered, you got a better job and a better job. And finally, you might find something you're good at, something you like to do, and you'd stick in that field for years. But it was always a job, not a career. You weren't out there to have a career. You were out there to support yourself and support your family. And you did whatever it took to get the coon. That's what I've done for my whole life. But that was Clyde May, and his family has restarted it. They bake apples, put them in the aging barrels. And this is a single barrel, and I didn't realize it when I bought it, but it is a store pick for Total Wine, which is where I got it. I got it at Kelly, actually, back on the 8th of July. Cost me $58.99, so $59, close enough to 60s. Don't make no, never mind. And yeah, I can see on the screen how full I'm getting this. And that's right, just about right. You don't fill a Glencairn glass to the top. The most I've ever done is to right about here, when that was the last in the bottle. But you fill it to the widest part so that there's more of a surface for evaporation, and then the vapors come up to the top and concentrate so that you can nose them, and that improves what you smell and what you taste. And I thought I had myself, before I even started filming, in the right place, but I'm hitched over to my right a little. So we're sipping and talking. I had something I wanted to babble about before I sat down, and it is plumb zipped out of my mind. So let's talk about English. Let's talk about different ways of speaking English, since that's what I'm doing. As far as I'm concerned, there are three ways: the Texas way, the Southern way, and the wrong way. Anything that ain't Texas or Southern is wrong. I consider a Yankee accent to be a speech impediment. Oak and cinnamon and smokiness is what I'm getting predominantly. Now, there's this popular misconception that Southern and ignorant, I-G-N-E-R-N-T, ignorant, are synonymous terms. But you just heard me say predominantly. You heard me say synonymous. And I may pronounce them differently than some Harvard professor, although I'm sure the professors at Harvard don't talk like a poor working person from Boston. You know, Boston, you park your car in Harvard Yard. Although Harvard is actually across the Charles River from Boston, it's in Cambridge, which is a separate city from Boston. And if the people in Boston won't tell you that, the people in Cambridge sure will. And there is some apple on the nose, even though this is down to about 2/3. You can see there. But being Southern and being ignorant are not actually synonymous. I have met some Westerners and some Northerners who were just so ignorant they made dirt look like it had an education. And there are some Southerners with high-class educations. Now, I've never been to college, I don't have a degree, but I am not ignorant nor ignorant. See, I know how to say the word. It's just I talk sloppy. Doesn't mean my mind is sloppy. In the Virginian by Owen Wister come out, as I recall, in 1901, one of the first real westerns, as opposed to a Penny Dreadful shoot-'em-up type thing. And how many of these learned people today even heard the term Penny Dreadful in their lives? But in the Virginian, no, I take it back. It's not in the Virginian. It's in The Keylock Man by Louis L'Amour, or Louis L'Amour, however you want to pronounce his name. You know, I never heard the pronunciation Louis outside of a French context until I was an adult. There was Saint Louis, as some people have called it, but that's still kind of a French context. That's people not going by the spelling, but by what they heard. And I don't speak French, but I believe that, I kind of imagine that in French it would be something like Saint Louis. Don't speak French, don't want to speak French. You try to make me speak French, I will gut you. I'd sooner be dead than have to speak French. But in The Keylock Man, Matt Keylock says that, and as a side note, Louis L'Amour's characters were not consistent. He'd have them talking like, and he'd present a genuinely uneducated character who'd never read nothing but the Bible and maybe one or two other books in his life. Maybe never learned to read, to write, or anything. He'd present him, the character would start off talking like somebody from the high up hills, and 2 paragraphs later he'd be talking like a college graduate. Now, I understand that people can talk different ways depending on the context. I do it. You get me in the right situation, I'm not losing the sound, but the vocabulary and the grammar will improve as appropriate. There is definitely apple and smokiness on that, and I'll get to the taste here directly. But Matt Keylock said that he had known people from Germany, from here, there, everywhere, but out in the West, in the cow camps and on the trail, they talked Western, even though some of them had graduated from big, famous European universities. It does smell good. Got a right nice mouthfeel. This is 102 proof, so not terribly strong, but it has a nice mouthfeel, creamy, not enormously so. You're not going to get that at just 102 proof, but good mouthfeel. And even though I don't on the first sip look for flavor, when I first took it in, I got a burst of caramel, apples, and cinnamon. So, getting back to where I was 2 or 3 digressions ago. Digressions. See? You can talk like a hick, you can be a hick, and not be ignorant. But being Southern is not the same as being ignorant. William Faulkner was not ignorant, but he was a Southerner. He was from Mississippi, and he built his, I think it's Yoknapatawpha or something like that, his fictional county, on the basis of his what he knew growing up in Mississippi. And I've tried reading Faulkner. He constructed beautiful sentences that you can't understand. It's like somebody putting a bunch of colors on a canvas in such a way that it forms this beautiful pattern, and you look at it and what is it? You know, he might call it cloud number 5. Okay, the colors are beautiful. I don't see a cloud. But Faulkner was by no means a dunce. He was by no means ignorant. I'm getting a lot of cinnamon, getting butter. There is that apple underneath. Unfortunately, I found that Clyde Mays whiskey, when you first open the bottle, you get that apple strong. And then on subsequent glasses, it recedes. You get it, or you get it on the first glass, and then it recedes until it's kind of floating along under everything else. It's there, but I wished it was more prominent. Or did I already say that? I think I said prominently. Flannery O'Connor was Southern. She was a lot more approachable than Faulkner. One thing I am is somewhat forgetful, and I've been that way all my life. You can't call it on being on account of my gray hair, although I've been going gray for years now. I'm only 65. But even in my teens, I could go into the kitchen, open the cabinet, and not remember why I was there. I am not more forgetful now than I was then, but I'm not less forgetful either. So if I start getting Alzheimer's disease, will I become less forgetful since I'm already able to forget my name if I don't tattoo it on my eyelids? One thing I haven't well, actually there's several things I haven't forgotten. My name, my birthday, my wife's birthday, our anniversary, which is Friday. I'm recording this on Wednesday. If Friday's the 29th, today must be the 27th. I'm not going to get up and check the calendar. It's right over my shoulder here. But on Friday is our 46th anniversary. Now, by the time I upload this, it's going to surely be past that. I am several weeks ahead now on recording because I'm able to record almost every night. I'm on vacation this week. I keep telling myself I'm not going to record, and then an idea occurs to me, and I grab my stuff, come in here, and fire up the video. Okay. Let me get where I can. Okay, it's 18 minutes plus. And I haven't really said anything much, especially about the whiskey. On that sip, in addition to the other notes that I've already talked about, I got a real strong honey note. And whiskey can be like that. From one sip to the next, you might get something you didn't get before. As your mouth becomes acclimated. I was trying to pronunciate it wrong. I had a Spanish teacher. I took, I believe it was 1 year of Spanish. Yeah, 1 year of Spanish in high school. Most of the Spanish I know I learned by being around people who speak Spanish. But this teacher, who had the sense of humor of a fence post, I mean, he was just dour and stern and dictatorial. But one time, actually I know 2 times, he made a joke. One time was in the 1976 yearbook, and he was a skinny dude. You got to understand that. I mean, he was like a stick figure. And his picture had the caption under it, "Ay, que gordo, come demasiado tortillas," which means, oh, how fat I am. I eat too many tortillas. That's one of the 2 jokes I know he made. The other was where he said, in speaking Spanish, you have to enunciate and pronunciate. I didn't know he had it in him, but I guess he had it in him to make 2 jokes. And where I got off on that, I don't know. This is good bourbon, high-class bourbon. And back in January of this year, 2025, Clyde May opened their own distillery in Alabama. So in 2 years, they'll be able to sell their own straight bourbon whiskey. It has to be at least 2 years old to be straight whiskey. In 4 years, they'll be able to sell whiskey with no age statement and still call it straight. Now, you can bottle it at whatever age you want. You know, you can bottle it after 2 months if you want, and just don't put straight whiskey on the label. But it's, I don't know whether it is an indication of more quality or just a tradition, but almost all the bourbon you find is going to be straight bourbon whiskey. That means, of course, it goes by all the rules of bourbon. It is at least 2 years old, and if it's between 2 and 4 years old, it definitely has an age statement. Over 4 years, it's still straight bourbon, but you don't have to put the age statement. This is, oh, let me see here. Well, it's bottled on February 3rd, 2017. So this has been in the bottle for a while before I bought it. 17 to 25 is 8 years. They bottled it 8 years ago. Distilled and aged for 5 years. So this is a 5-year-old whiskey. And 5 years in the Alabama climate makes it fairly dark, although I'm sure they proofed it down to 102. In that climate, after 5 years in a barrel, I bet you, unless they had a real low barrel entry proof, it was probably sky high. But, you know, we have 102, 5-year bourbon, Purdy label, and I gotta wrap this up. I'm at 23 minutes. Right here at the top of the label, I don't know how well you can read it, but on the other side of this arch, over here it says, available since 1946, which is when Clyde May commenced to distill his liquor. Legal since 2001. That's when they got all the license and started selling legally. Now, Clyde May was dead by the time this stuff become legal. But for once, when they say they're using his recipe, I believe them. Because the people who are making it today are close enough to Clyde May himself that they would certainly had the opportunity to hear how he did it, if not from him, then from his next generation, from his kids. I believe the guy who's running it now is Clyde May's grandson. So that is a short gap. It's not like we're using the old family recipe from 1724. Well, how much of a gap is there in there? Here you have a really short gap. You know, I learned things from my grandmother, who was born in 1900, so she was 46 when Clyde May started making his liquor, and died in 1983. So there are things I know that I learned from somebody who was born over 100 years ago, and the same thing can be true for this recipe. But as I said, I need to wrap it up. The fact that I talk, mostly, including on these videos, like I am an ignorant hick, does not mean that I am ignorant. Being Southern does not mean ignorant. It just means a different culture, a different way of talking. And for some of us, it just means we're relaxed, we're comfortable, we're not all uptight, we're not out putting on a front, we're not presenting a facade. There's another fancy word, more or less. I'm a WYSIWYG kind of guy. That's an old BBSing acronym. What you see is what you get. I don't care to impress anybody. I'm not trying to make anybody think I'm smart or learned or anything else. What you see me and hear me do on these videos is just plain who and what I am. And that's not ignorance. That's confidence. That's being comfortable with who and what you are. That's accepting yourself for who and what you are, which everybody talks about today and don't do. I do. We Southerners do.